Eden Memorial Chapels understands Jewish funerals can take many forms. Some are very orthodox, while others are more conservative or of a reformed nature. There's no one better in New York or New Jersey. Go to EdenMemorial.com.
Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Breaking news, WABC.
And tonight on Katz and Cosby, big news. The mastermind of the October 7th horrible attacks by Hamas on Israel has now been killed. Yahya Sinwar, who has been the leader of Hamas in Gaza since 2017, believed to have directed all of the military efforts by Hamas and also with close ties to Iran, has now been eradicated, and that is great news for the world, but no thanks to the Biden-Harris administration. Joining us, we're going to have today, we have Ed Cox with us, New York GOP chair. We also have former New York Democratic Governor David Paterson and Judge Richard Weinberg. John is en route, by the way, to the Al Smith dinner, because we're going to be talking about that in a few moments. Ed Cox, this is huge news. And, you know what? I look at it this way. I think Sinwar would still be alive if Netanyahu followed Biden and Harris's strategy.
There's no leader on the ground now for Hamas, and he was it. He has been eliminated, and now they've got to do the mopping up.
What do you think? This is big news, Judge Weinberg, and the world. We should be thanking Israel left and right.
I think now's the time for Hamas to have an unconditional surrender and end the war. They want to end the war? Very simple. Unconditional surrender, return the hostages, give up your arms, and let it get sorted out. That's how you end. You know,
over 40 Americans, by the way, were killed on October 7th. Many people don't even realize that.
You don't hear that from the Biden-Harris administration.
You don't hear it. You don't, and there's still 4 Americans being held that they believe are alive right now. So maybe this is an opportunity to get everybody home, not just the Americans home, but hopefully the other hostages. But what's stunning is that, you know, today we see Kamala Harris come out and she makes a statement and said, we've been working really closely with the Israelis. I mean, you know, Governor Paterson, come on. That is such a ridiculous statement coming from Kamala Harris, who couldn't even show up for Netanyahu's speech on Capitol Hill.
Well, that's why she can't show up, because they've been working very hard on this issue. And I think that
sabotage Israelis.
Now that
she's from a middle class neighborhood.
Now that he's been killed, I think she has time to get to that dinner.
Oh, the Al Smith dinner, by the way. That's a perfect segue, because the Al Smith dinner, where John will be and you guys will also be attending later, Ed and the governor, Donald Trump is going to be speaking. But we are hearing that Kamala Harris, first of all, who didn't even want to show up for the event, she was asked a long time ago, said, no, I'm not available that day. And now we're hearing she's handing in a pre-recorded message. Your thoughts? I mean, what do you think?
Actually, her interview could have been pre-recorded, too, the interview with Bret Baier. She had memorized the event, and she just said what she wanted to say. Here, you don't have the excitement there, the give and take between the two main leaders of the two parties who are vying for the presidency.
I think they shouldn't run it. What do you think? I mean, I actually think, you guys, they should not run that clip. I think whatever it is, if she doesn't have the guts to show up and help, it goes to a great charity, the Al Smith dinner, of course, iconic dinner in New York City. And it goes to Catholic Charities. It goes to a noble mission. If she doesn't have the courage to show up and deal with a little bit of extemporaneous banter, come on.
Not just courage. It's disrespectful to that community that gives so much to the American people.
I agree. And by the way, the last time somebody didn't show up, it was Walter Mondale, you guys,
and
in the 1980s. What was it, 49 states he lost, Judge, right?
Let's just remember that Richard Nixon ducked the Al Smith dinner, and he won 49 states.
Oh, what do you think, Ed Cox? Look.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, very interesting.
Dinner. Because remember,
In
McGovern
68
said that
or 60
in 72.
72.
Because
72, okay.
remember, McGovern
Yeah.
showed up and he got one line off. He said, "President Nixon's not here, but I'm sure he's listening in," because that was during the Watergate bugging thing. But he did. Well, he was way ahead. He wasn't going to lose.
What do you make of that, Ed Cox?
Different situation.
I was going to say,
he was
definitely.
president. Yeah.
I think in this case, though, they shouldn't run it. What do you think, Governor Patterson? What are your thoughts?
I think you can make a case. We invite you to our dinner, and you say you're not coming because of whatever. And, you know, if it was a family emergency or, some other intervening cause, people would accept that. But now you want to send a videotape when you're going to be campaigning the same time the people at the dinner are listening to the videotape. It's quite presumptuous. And I'm a Democrat. I'm going to vote for Harris. But this is just not.
Oh, be still my heart.
Even after that dismal interview that she did last night with Fox News?
President Trump just lost a vote because Judge Weinberg just collapsed on the floor.
Yeah, I think so.
We need medical attention over here right now.
I think he needs. Ed Cox, what did you think of the interview last night?
It was not a classy thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, speaking of not classy, I thought she came across really angry last night in the interview, too.
Angry and rude.
Yes, condescending.
And after that, it'd be hard for her to show up at the Al Smith dinner and be nice.
Yes.
That's a key to it. Be nice, and in your comments, you kind of with humor, you cut each other up, but with humor, and in the end, you show bipartisanship.
The reason she didn't show up is because she's not capable of doing that.
No, she can't do it.
She cannot do that.
Because that's what the
last
interview
night.
was. The interview was pure attack, pre-planned as whatever the question was, attack.
And by the way, I thought
Trump.
I thought Brett Baer was excellent.
He did a great job.
He had the right questions. He had the right follow-up. He didn't allow himself to be bullied, and he was still a gentleman.
Except you know what they're saying today? Some people close to Kamala Harris are saying it was an ambush. It was a fair interview. She just hasn't had a hard question before this moment. It's been like a walk on the, in the lilies up until this moment.
Her about sex or something?
Yeah, Call Her Daddy podcast. Go ahead, Gov Patterson.
I was just going to say, I went to the Al Smith dinner in 2008 when John McCain was the Republican nominee and Barack Obama was the Democratic nominee. It was hilarious. Both of them were really funny. And that's the whole spirit of the charity.
Yep.
It's political because it is, but most of the politicians kind of, they take little shots at each other, and it's pretty funny, and they shake hands, which rarely happens anywhere. And then the campaign goes on. Yeah,
and I've been to many an Al Smith dinner, and you're right. It's all in good fun. It's for a good mission. But the fact that she's afraid to go to the Al Smith dinner and is sending in a pre-recorded, that speaks volumes. Well, joining us now to talk about this enormous development in the Middle East is Professor Alan Dershowitz. War Against the Jews is his big book. Professor Dershowitz, we couldn't wait to talk with you today. First of all, what incredible news, thanks to the Israelis.
It's great. It's great for the Palestinians. I think many Palestinians are quietly cheering the Israelis today, saying thank you for ridding us of this terrible man who has inflicted so much damage on us by using us as human shields. The vast majority of people who have been killed in the Gaza Strip are not innocent civilians. They are a combination of terrorist fighters and people who cheered for the terrorist fighters. Remember these videotapes where you see these women being dragged in and having just been raped and being attacked, and all these, quote, civilians are cheering them on and hitting the people and everything. Those are the people who are the collateral damage who are being killed. So, I shed a tear for every child who's killed and every totally innocent person, but I don't shed any tears for the Hamas supporters who happen not to be members of Hamas, who were killed because they're being used as human shields. And today, of course, we see the death of the snake, the leader, and what a good result that is. And I hope it brings about the return of the hostages. What the great fear is that the irrational and horribly evil Hamas leaders will try to take revenge on some of the hostages. They've already killed, close to a dozen hostages, innocently murdered them while they have their hands tied, and the worry is that they may try to do more of that. I hope not. I hope Israel persists in its attack. The other thing that I think we have to say, both President Obama and Vice President Harris issued kind of victory lap statements today about how wonderful this was. It would never have happened if Israel had listened to them. They had said, don't go into Rafah. Don't go after Sinwar. Let it be. And thankfully, Israel didn't listen and sent its soldiers in. And in the course of a military attack, they killed Sinwar. So the big lesson is, the United States does not know what's in the best interest of Israel when it comes to Israel protecting itself. Israel has to make its own decisions to protect its own people, just the way we make our own decisions on how to protect our own people, and as we did after 9/11.
You know what? I heard today also, Professor Dershowitz, and I know you're close to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Yeah. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, to me, it was such a leader statement today. And he came out and said, first of all, this is great news, obviously, for Israel and the world. And then he said to everybody there, like you said, in Gaza, the good people, this is good news for you, and the bad people, you better, hand in your weapons right now and turn over the hostages, or else you are next.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, and they will be next. And nobody who participated in the events of October 7th should live to see their children and grandchildren grow up. They have to be dealt with in a way that's just and in a way that's appropriate, and that means death or arrest. They can't be allowed to live their good lives if they participate in any way, by cheering, by supporting, by financing what happened on October 7th. By the way, the same is true of college kids today. You're going to see college kids today in the United States at places like Harvard cheering on Sinwar. They're going to make a martyr out of him. They're going to say it was terrible what Israel did, that he was a great man. Certainly the National Lawyers Guild is going to be praising Sinwar, as they have in the past. And, we live in a topsy-turvy world. And we in America have to hold accountable people who support Hamas. And whether they be professors at Columbia, and there are plenty of those, or students.
By the way, you brought up the Lawyers Guild. We're all shaking our head. What has the Lawyers Guild said about this horrible, brutal man who was behind October 7th?
The National Lawyers Guild, the day after October 7th, praised Hamas for doing what they did, said it was part of a national liberation struggle. What they did was appropriate, and it was all Israel's fault.
They did a big press release about it.
And every major law firm in New York has lawyers who belong to the National Lawyers Guild. They have branches on every law school campus in the United States. They are anti-American, they're anti-Semitic, they're anti-Israel, they're anti-everything decent. The National Lawyers Guild, remember that. Nobody should hire anybody who belongs to the National Lawyers Guild. It's like belonging to the Nazi Party.
Wow, that is really stunning. Governor Patterson.
Yes, that is pretty much their position, and it was their position even before October 7th.
But it started, the National Lawyers Guild started as an alternate to the American Bar Association. It had all kinds of liberal people in it, good people, and then they were taken over by the Soviet Union. They became a communist front. They became a complete, they're pro-North Korea. They're anti-American. They're, of course, anti-Israel. And everybody ought to understand what the National Lawyers Guild is, because every single law school, major law school in America, has a National Lawyers Guild branch, and people are hiring people from the National Lawyers Guild without knowing it.
Alan, what is your view about how people either change their minds or get sucked into this kind of an effort, which is totally hurting people who have never hurt them?
No, it's true. And that's why I wrote my new pamphlet, this new pamphlet that's coming out in a couple of weeks, called the 10 Big Anti-Israel Lies and How to Respond to Them. I'm trying to get 1 million copies of that to at 1,000 schools, so that people with open minds can understand who they're supporting when they march with Hamas. It has answers to all of the accusations made against Israel, and We have to respond to falsehoods with truth. That's what I've been trying to do. I don't want to censor anybody. I just want to get into the marketplace of ideas and make sure that the truth prevails over the blood libels that have been spread by anti-Israel hate mongers.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, before we let you go, also, Professor Dershowitz, there are a lot of stories out there. This is interesting. I wanted to run this by you. Eric Adams' legal hopes in the corruption case could depend on Trump's victory, maybe a change of, obviously, the U.S. attorney.
Well, that's interesting. I don't think so. I think that U.S. attorneys tend, particularly in the Southern District, Eastern District, good places, they tend to follow the evidence. I don't think we're going to see major changes. It's possible, but I wouldn't think anybody should vote on that basis. I think you vote based on what you think is best for America in general, best for the world, best for people that you care about.
Yeah, great points. And of course, we'll see where the investigation goes. Professor Dershowitz, thank you. We were cheering for Israel left and right here in the studio. Great news. Thank you.
Yeah, great news. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor. And joining us now is Mark Penn, the great political pollster and consultant, Democrat, of course, who very close to the Clintons and others. Mark, I can't wait to get your reaction to the interview with Bret Baier and Kamala Harris last night. What did you think?
Well, look, I don't understand what her point was in doing this interview. She really was just going to attack Donald Trump on any question and just do anti-Trump talking points, which to tell that to a Fox News audience didn't strike me as a strategy to make any sense. When Bret Baier, he's a real journalist. If she were giving real answers to the questions, he would have been quite patient with her and given her lots of room instead of what she did. And look, and I think Bret, after the interview, pretty much did her in and said, look, they cut the time. They were frantic to get her out there. She didn't really answer the questions.
And she talked, and Mark, she talked over him constantly. She engaged in her own personal filibuster against him. She was dodging and weaving and talking down to him. And he was a gentleman and he was a professional journalist.
Exactly. And I think that's why I think Bret Baier said, well, her point was to go home to the liberals and say, aha, you see, I stood up to Fox News. And I think Bret Baier, he was very, very well prepared to pin her down and call out, some of the nonsense like, oh, I put this bill in for the border, and complete nonsense about immigration and these other things that other interviewers kind of let pass through as facts. But yes, she was not answering the questions, kind of filibustering with just trying to get in negative Trump talking points. And so I don't know. Look, everybody who's decided, I don't think that changed any minds. Anybody who was really open-minded and looking for an informative interview didn't get one because that's not what she came to do.
Yeah, see, I think it hurt her with independence, Mark. I was watching and thinking, if I'm an independent, I'm skeptical about her because it was clear she wasn't answering concise questions. I mean, he started with the very first one saying, okay, how many have been let out? How many illegal migrants have been let out? And it's a number. Alejandro Mayorkas has come out and said it was about 85%. It was a pretty easy answer. I could have answered it, and she wouldn't answer it. And I think it's because she didn't want to. She knows how bad it is. She wouldn't apologize to Laken Riley's family. I mean, there were some things that were just, to me, watching. If I'm an American, I go, this woman's not ready for prime time.
Well, look, I would not have expected her to apologize to the families. I don't think that was realistic. I think as it started off, she could have said, yes, we know how many people, went through the border. We've put in these programs. Yeah, she could have answered the questions. So, look, she wasn't really there to answer any questions. She was there to take on Bret Baier, get some headlines. And you saw the headlines. It's like people were telling me this morning, if I look at this, she was dazed and confused, says one side, and she was brilliant and took on Bret Baier, says the other side.
Although some Democrats are saying it was an ambush, like that she looked like a deer in headlights, an ambush. So But you're right. It wasn't an ambush. You and I know Bret Baier well. It wasn't an ambush. Governor Patterson.
Mark, I just thought that this interview was going to be an opportunity for her to talk to independents and even to talk to Trump supporters. And there are a lot of Trump supporters who probably don't think much of him personally, but do think that he could lead the country better than she could. This would have been a way for her to kind of flip the script, but apparently she didn't show any of that. And she still gets into these situations where she doesn't seem to actually know how to answer the question, and that's a little disturbing.
No, she did not go into that interview with the intent to let's have a heart-to-heart sit-down with Bret Baier. She went into that interview with the intent to aggressively attack Donald Trump for 20 minutes. That is what the strategy clearly was. That was what she executed. It didn't matter if Bret Baier asked her, what was the weather today. She would have said Donald Trump is responsible for all the rain, that ever occurred for the last 10 years. So, what I really want to see in all of this stuff is I want that CBS transcript. The fact that CBS will not release a transcript of an interview with a presidential candidate is outrageous. They are in the information business to inform the voters, and I think there is zero justification for them not releasing that transcript. And so it has to either be really bad. We know when Her never released the transcripts on Biden that we know why, because it was really bad. And there's only one reason that these transcripts aren't being released. They really reflect poorly on CBS. And CBS has got to bite the bullet and should be pressured. It's an outrageous thing for them not to want the voters to see what the candidate actually said.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ed Cox, real quick.
And actually, that was done during the vice presidential debate, when they actually shut off the mic of J.D. Vance when he was fact-checking the fact-checker.
And also, by the way,
who was not supposed to be fact-checking to begin with.
There's a complaint also with the FCC against CBS and 60 Minutes now, too, which is interesting, saying, look, you're supposed to be fair. How does this adhere to journalism standards? That cutting off and also this.
Cutting off the mic?
Right. I mean, come on.
Same thing they're doing here.
The irony now is that the FBI revised the crime figures for, I believe it's 22, right? Is it 22? They revised the crime figures that were down to up 4.5%, right? And Real Clear Politics got a hold of the story and put it out. They put out no press release. They just went in and changed the spreadsheets.
That's like the work numbers. Remember the employment numbers? Oh, we're wrong. We didn't add 23,000. X amount, 818,000. Right? Just an estimate. Right? Oh my God, Mark Penn. Thank you very much. Great points. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Great to have you. And everybody, next here on Katz and Cosby, KT McFarland on this big development, taking out the terror mastermind of Hamas.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby.
Okay.
And we continue now talking about developments in the Middle East. Big ones today with Israel taking out the leader of Hamas. All of this happening, by the way, think about all the things they've done just in the last year. It's been extraordinary. Some people are calling it the greatest counterterrorism effort in world history when they took out all the Hamas leaders and Hezbollah. And joining us now is the former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump, KT McFarland. It's Rita Cosby. John is en route to the Al Smith dinner. And we also have with us Ed Cox, Governor Patterson, and of course, Judge Richard Weinberg. KT, this is an enormous deal. And to see Biden and Kamala Harris taking victory laps today, give me a break.
A few months ago, President Biden was telling the Israelis publicly, don't go into Rafah. Don't do this, or we're going to stop our weapons supply resupply to Israel, and Israel, ignored him. And of course, where did Yahya Sinwar get assassinated? In Rafah. So if the Israelis had listened to Biden, whether it was on Hamas or Hezbollah, they wouldn't be where they are now. And where they are now is they have now taken out all of the senior leaders of all of the major proxy terrorist armies fighting against them. Whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas, they're dead.
KT, it's Richard Weinberg. Good to talk to you again.
Hi.
So what do they do now, since they've also been told not to go after Iran, not to go after their nuclear sites, not to go after their oil facilities? What do the Israelis do now? And they've also been threatened again about not getting military supplies.
Here's the thing. Israel's got a big decision to make. Do they just stop now and say, okay, we got rid of Hezbollah, we got rid of Hamas, we haven't gotten rid of Iran, we haven't degraded Iran in any way? Do we just sort of sit tight and wait, maybe see what happens in the November elections? Or do we continue to press? The thing is that now that they've taken out the senior leadership, they've decimated Hezbollah and Hamas. They've decapitated them. They've decimated them. They're not a potent military force in any way. So why should Israel wait? Why let them rebuild? This is when Iran is the most naked and vulnerable. Perhaps Israel should go and, Israel will retaliate for the latest Iranian missile strikes, but where do they retaliate? Do they only go against military targets, which is what the Biden administration wants? Or do they go against perhaps the oil fields? Do they take those out? Do they even go after the nuclear sites? Remember, Iran now has no real air defense, so Israel can kind of do whatever Israel wants to do.
How worried, KT, should the supreme leader be? We always talk about this. John makes the joke of he's going to worry about going to the bathroom, that there might be like a bomb in the toilet. But he's got to be worried now,
Don't laugh. The blackmail that Iran has had over Israel and really the world is to say, you come after Iran in any way and we're going to destroy Israel because we have the proxies with Hezbollah, Hamas, we have missiles, we're going to just take Israel off the face of the earth. Well, that threat's gone because there is no Hamas, there is no Hezbollah. So what if you're an Iranian leader, just think about it. John makes a kind of funny point, but it's a real point because some of the senior leaders of Hezbollah were assassinated within blocks of where the mullahs live, in guest houses provided by the Iranian intelligence. So Iran, and then most recently, it turns out that the head of the unit that Iran had set up to ferret out and find Mossad agents in Iran, well, it turns out the head of that unit was a sleeper agent for Mossad. So if you're the Iranian senior leadership, you've got to really worry, how big is this penetration? How much is Mossad in our intelligence and security services? And, oh, by the way, do they have my address?
Yeah, absolutely. Judge Weinberg, before we go, you have a question with KT about North Korea.
KT, I pick up the Wall Street Journal today, and I see that North Korea is allegedly sending troops to support Russia in their invasion of Ukraine. What do you make of that?
Well, this is the new axis of evil. It's Iran and North Korea as junior partners to Russia and China. They're swapping weapons back and forth. They're swapping fighters back and forth. They're getting battlefield experience. And they are now an alliance that the West has to face. Do we back down? Do we challenge them? So far, the Biden administration's approach has been, well, if we don't get them too upset with us, they're not going to come after us. And yet that's been shown, whether it's with Putin and Ukraine or whether it's been with Iran and Israel or even with China and Taiwan, that appeasement just doesn't work. You've got to stand up to them.
Yeah, that is the lesson, and hopefully this White House wakes up at some point. It's incredible as we're seeing what's going on all around the globe. KT, thank you very, very much. Thanks for being here, KT.
Honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to some of the other big headlines.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And everybody, we are, get this, 19 days from Election Day. VP Harris is campaigning at spots in Wisconsin, such as Milwaukee and also Green Bay. Meanwhile, former President Trump will give remarks at the Al Smith dinner in New York. And also, New York Governor Kathy Hochul is throwing her support behind New York City Mayor Eric Adams as he fights federal corruption charges. The governor was challenged by a reporter today who asked why she won't demand his resignation, but did demand Adams overhaul his top staff members who have not been charged with a crime. Hochul says the difference is staff members are employees at will and the mayor is in office at the will of the voters. And those are the big headlines and much more after the break. We'll talk to former Border Chief Ron Vitiello.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. John is off, headed to the Al Smith dinner. By the way, just a little bit ago, Cardinal Dolan was commenting and saying he's being told it's some sort of a pre-recorded Zoom or tape that Kamala Harris will indeed be giving tonight and not showing up in person. And obviously a lot of disappointment from a lot of people there. And we're going to talk about that, of course, later on. We have Michael Goodwin coming up on the show. But last night, Kamala Harris was confronted left and right over the issue of border and also immigration. She would not give, it seemed like, a coherent answer. At least that was my take on a lot of it. And joining us now is the former Border Patrol chief, also ICE director, former one as well, Ron Vitiello. Ron, you, I'm sure, watched this interview last night with Fox News. What was your reaction as she didn't seem to want to give a single answer, didn't even really have an answer about the deaths of, Laken Riley and Joycelyn Nungary and Rachel Moore and a lot of these sad, very horrible cases that have made a lot of headlines across the country due to illegal migrants.
Yeah, it's more of the same, Rita, isn't it? She refuses to take responsibility for what she was in charge of as the vice president of the United States. She says she wasn't the border czar, but she was supposed to work on root causes of immigration. How is she working on root causes of migration if she doesn't know how many people were released into the United States last year, the year before, or since she's been the vice president? So failure to take accountability, no responsibility or credibility on this issue, and then just kind of waved her hands over the victims that are all over the United States and didn't connect her own actions to what happened to these poor women and kids that were abused. No account for the people who are being trafficked into the United States, no account for the rise in crime that we now know is actually real in major cities in the United States. Some of that crime caused by gangs that didn't exist in the United States before she was the vice president.
And nothing about fentanyl and nothing about the 80,000 kids who've disappeared.
That's right. We've had just last year, I looked at the data because I wanted to remember when she said she didn't know the number. I looked at the data yesterday. 73,000 people from China have come into the country just last year.
Wow.
Now, okay, let's just, even if that's 5 years or 3 years or 10 years, no account for that, no special, enforcement procedure, no alerts intelligence-wise, nothing coming out of the White House, nothing coming out of her. 297,000 people from Venezuela are here.
Wow. But Ron, when you say those numbers, my reaction, we were watching it together, the judge and I and John, when the interview happened. And my reaction was she knows the answer. She just doesn't want to say it. Maybe I'm giving her too much credit, but she knows how bad it is. It's absolutely damning.
Yeah, correct. We know where she really is on this. Remember when she was running for the presidency, when she was running for the nomination, she said she wanted to decriminalize illegal entry into the United States and not treat these people like criminals. She didn't want immigration detention for people who come into the United States. Just imagine that. And then she talks about this bill that they put up on day one. Well, I spent a little bit of time on that. The fact sheet for that bill is still on the whitehouse.gov website. The bill that they put up that she says would have fixed the problem if Donald Trump didn't get in the way or the Republicans didn't get in the way. She blames everybody but herself. But the bill that they put up would not have given anybody that has come into the United States illegally any relief since she's been the vice president. Think about that. She said, no, we did this on the first day of our administration. We put this bill forward. That bill does not account for the nearly, well, it's 10 million at least. It's probably more. It's probably closer to 20 million. But none of those people would qualify under the legislation that they supposedly dropped on day one. And it was so good that Chuck Schumer didn't put it on the floor. It was even better because Nancy Pelosi didn't put it on the floor. So it's complete obfuscation of what her responsibilities are. The day one plan that gives amnesty to every single person in the United States that's been here for the last 3 years. And, this is the best part. It allows for the Secretary of Homeland Security, if this bill passed, it would allow the Secretary of Homeland Security to reopen the deportation cases that occurred while Donald Trump was president.
Wow.
So there is no serious effort by this woman, by anybody that's associated with her in the Democratic Party, to fix the problem on the border, because they've not done anything that looks relevantly like it could work, because none of the stuff that they talk about is factual or effective.
I'm just amazed, Ron, that she cited that piece of proposed legislation as explanation of how they were acting with respect to illegals crossing the border. And it was very easy to knock down and say, well, it was about amnesty.
Yeah, citizenship. It was
about citizenship,
right.
And Bear said that. She opened herself up for that. It just was dumb, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, first, because she knew he was smart enough to call her, like, if she blamed Trump on the bipartisan Senate bill, which Brett pointed out, 8 Democrats voted against, right? She knew he was going to call her if she started there. So she started on the day one plan, which was always eyewash, which was always like a farce. There was no way that bill was ever going to pass because they had control of both the House and the Senate when they dropped that bill.
Yeah, that is incredible. Everybody, we're talking to the former border chief and also chief of immigration and customs enforcement, Ron Vitiello. Judge Weinberg.
Ron, what she seemed to conveniently forget is it was on day one they rescinded all the Trump executive orders that opened the border. That's what happened on day one.
Exactly right, Judge. The root cause of our current migration crisis is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris because, as you point out, he wanted to restrict and rescind removals and deportations from the United States. They ended the migrant protection protocols, which was a historic agreement with Mexico, which was leading to the lowest illegal crossing activity on our southwest border in 50 years. That's what they inherited on day one. They tore it all down within the first days of the administration, and we've lived through the crisis ever since. And she's blaming everyone but herself for the conditions that it's in now.
You know, the other day we had on one of the guys, he's with the head of the Border Patrol Union, and we asked him, how is the situation at the border now? And he's like, it's much worse than even the images that we see. How dangerous do you think the policies of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have been to our country? And do you believe, Ron Vitiello, as someone who's been there on the front lines, we're going to feel this for generations to come?
Yes, we absolutely are. Like in the interview, they talked about Rachel Morin and Jocelyn Nongaray, the women that have been, Lake and Riley, that have been killed by people who should not have been here and only have gotten here in a very short amount of time. We know about the gang activity from this dangerous, vicious Venezuelan gang. We know about the 70,000+ Chinese that are here. We know that included in this illicit flow, Iranians, Russians, people who live to hate Americans. And then these cartels have been given so much resources. They've been emboldened and enriched by this policy of the Biden-Harris administration. Mexico and people who live on the border, all of us in the United States, are going to live with the after effects of this giant mass migration. You know, nearly 20 million people are in the country who we did not invite and we know very little about. And so the Russians, the Iranians, North Korea, you name it, they're going to take advantage of this. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, really scary stuff. And the fact that they won't answer anything or hold any accountability is, it's shocking. It's really shocking. Ron Vitiello, thank you very much. And thanks for your great service, of course, always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to be on. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And joining us now is Republican Congressman Tom Keene from the great state of New Jersey. And of course, right now, in the middle of a race, for the 7th Congressional District of New Jersey. Tom, it's great to have you here. And also tell us about, first of all, how the race is going and the big issues there in New Jersey.
Well, thank you, Rita. Thank you, Judge. It's great to be with you again. Race is going great. We're going out in the district talking to people. The every single major police union is behind me. We've got the firefighters on board. We've got the building trades on board. So the carpenters and the iron workers and the electricians are on board. And the issues that we're talking about are things that people in the 7th Congressional District, which literally stretches all the way across the state of New Jersey, are talking about affordability, talking about personal safety, standing with our allies like Israel and Ukraine, and immigration as well. I mean, those are the things that we're working on and talking to people in the district about.
Judge Weinberg.
Congressman, good to talk to you again. Well, I'll tell you what concerns me a great deal. All the dirty secrets of the Democratic administration, the Biden influence peddling, would have been hidden but for the fact that the Republicans control the United States House of Representatives. So if you want to have accountability in government, if you want to make sure that this corruption is exposed, it's absolutely essential that you have legislative investigation and oversight, and the Republicans running the Congress have done that job. And they should be reelected just on that basis alone, Congressman.
Well, I'm chair of the Europe Subcommittee, and I've been very aggressive in making sure that we give Zelensky the tools necessary to win this battle, to push Biden and his administration, to give the long-range ATACMS, to give the economic aid that is necessary, and to make sure that we have not only the accountability, but also the success and the results.
You know, you also brought up Israel, too. Huge news today, of course, Congressman Tom Keene, that, of course, the takeout of the Hamas leader by Israel. And yet, you know, this administration really has been waffling in so many issues. I know there's, you know, a very great and vibrant Jewish constituency there in New Jersey, but they need to have our support.
Well, Israel has the right to defend her people and the right to win this fight. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Hezbollah has been firing missiles for too many years at Israel, and Iran has attacked Israel directly for the last twice this year, and that is unacceptable. And so we need to stand up against anti-Semitism here in this country and abroad. And we need to have Israel's back in this fight. We need to make sure the hostages are rescued as well. I mean, the Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organizations, and Iran wants to destroy Israel and the United States. We need to do everything we can to support Israel in this fight.
And Congressman, before we let you go, we're talking to the great Congressman there, Tom Keene of New Jersey, fighting there, has a challenger there in the 7th Congressional District. Obviously, great storied history of you and your family there in New Jersey, Tom. I think about also, what are you going to do to bring down taxes? Because taxes, we're feeling in New York, New Jersey, they're getting socked.
Yeah, well, the SALT is the important thing that we can bring back. We need to. My opponent actually opposed the SALT restoration as recently as 2019, when she was the head of the Working Families Party in New Jersey, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that we get SALT restoration restored. It was an unfair tax increase in this region, and we need to get it restored.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Congressman, we wish you so much luck. We'll be following the race tightly and closely. Good luck there, too, so much.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you so much. And everybody, next on Katz and Cosby, Michael Goodwin, talking about some new details on the Al Smith dinner and Kamala Harris.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And, of course, big news happening tonight in New York City, the Al Smith dinner, but Kamala Harris is MIA. Donald Trump will be there. And joining us now to talk about all of this is Pulitzer Prize winning columnist of the New York Post, Michael Goodwin. Michael, first of all, we understand what Kamala Harris isn't going to be there, but she sent in a pre-recorded message?
That's what I understand, Rita. It's very unusual. It's everyone always goes. It's part of a kind of give and take where you dish it out and then you take it. It's tough. You're tough, but you're funny. But if she's not in the room, I don't see how that works. I mean, is she going to get a free shot at Donald Trump and then not be there to take the blowback. I mean, it's always been part of as you well know, the camera work is to catch people laughing as they're being mocked by their opponent. I mean, it's that kind of night. It's kind of a roast of both candidates in which they participate. So I'm not really sure what she's doing. The Cardinal said that she was sending something, which led me to believe it's already been recorded.
So how do you take that, Michael? Do you take that what she's afraid to be in front of Catholics, or do you take that she's afraid to be extemporaneous? How do you take that?
It is a strange thing. I don't know if she's afraid of Catholics, if she's just unsure of herself on her feet. We know that she likes everything scripted, and perhaps she can't sit there and be made fun of or be in the same room with Trump and have him talking about her, or I don't know. It's a very strange decision. People point out that she's the first candidate, except for 2020 when it was because of COVID, but that only Walter Mondale has failed to go in the last 40 years. I might remind her that he lost 49 states.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did that work out for him? Exactly. Exactly. By the way, let's switch gears. We were talking about Al Smith. Ed Cox is also joining us. But also, let's get to I call it the debate, but it was the interview. She finally got some tough questions asked last night. And what did you make of the fact that she couldn't give a coherent answer? She bobbed and weaved. And I thought she looked defensive. I thought that interview really hurt her on Fox News. What did you think, Ed Cox?
I think she had prepared speeches that she gave regardless of the question, and the staff stopped that early because they thought, okay, she may have run out, she might repeat herself, but it was really prepared in advance.
That's a great point because, Michael, at the end, in fact, Bret Baier was saying last night that there were like 4 or 5 people from the staff saying, okay, enough. And they also had the interview late, so he couldn't turn it. Like they were trying to he used the phrase sort of ice him out. Your reaction, Michael?
Well, look, I don't understand why she went on Fox if she wasn't going to make any news, if she wasn't going to say something. I mean, let's just look at the big picture. She's addressing an audience that's primarily against her. That would be the fair reading, I think, of the Fox audience. And why not say something that causes some of them to give you another look? Why not make some news in a way that might catch a lot of attention across all of the networks, and they'd have to pick it up. And so you would have made news in what would be regarded as a hostile environment just because of the audience. But instead, as Ed says, and as you and I have discussed, it was like a filibuster. In fact, Bret Baier used that word in describing it, where she gave these long, slow answers.
And she didn't answer it.
Evasive. They were, as Ed says, they did sound like rehearsed speeches, and she was trying to run out the clock.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it hurt her, Michael. I actually think it hurt her because she came across as not even answering a basic question. He asked her right at the top, hey, what's the number of the people released? She couldn't answer it, didn't want to answer it. She probably does know the answer. She just knows it would work against her. She seemed evasive.
Yes, and again, then why go on there if you're not going to do sort of an honest interview and really try to wrestle with the questions? And look, the only thing I can figure is that she takes some air out of the balloon of this criticism that she doesn't do interviews, and maybe she thinks that she demonstrated to her supporters that she's tough on Fox, that she can take Fox. I don't know, but there was no obvious gain that I can see.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we let you go, Michael Goodwin, your thoughts on Israel. This was a huge development today, of course, taking out Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas. But no thanks to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
No, they keep trying to stop Israel from attacking Hezbollah, from attacking Gaza. Remember when they said you can't go into Rafah? Well, that's where they found Sinwar, in Rafah. So, look, I think the president and the vice president have really mishandled this, much as they have Ukraine. They're happy to give enough aid to keep things going, but they don't want these wars to end. I mean, it's more like you have to have a standoff. You have to have a negotiated ceasefire. That's all well and good, but not until the objective is achieved. Now, these are our enemies as well as Israel's. We should be grateful that Israel is taking on our enemies, but instead we act as though Israel is the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Michael Goodwin, thank you so much for joining us on so many important topics. We love having you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Ed.
Great to have you, Michael. Thank you very much. Well, it's going to be interesting. Ed, I know you're going to the Al Smith dinner tonight.
Yes, indeed.
And the way Cardinal Dolan described what Kamala Harris is sending in is she's doing a Zoom or something. So we don't, is it taped? Is it live? Either way, she's not in person.
That's a very nice way of saying that this is not good stuff.
Yeah, and he even said he's disappointed. I mean, come on. You know, I mean, it's like she can't handle anything sort of extemporaneous.
That she doesn't control. Exactly. That's it.
Yeah, that speaks volumes. Judge Weinberg?
Actually, it's not that she controls. It's her controllers control her.
Yeah, the ones who are waving, telling Brett Baer, you got to stop. You got to stop.
She's a mere figurehead. They replaced one figurehead, Biden, with another figurehead, Harris. That's what we're talking about.
Although, by the way, did you see the deer in the headlights when she was asked about Biden? Because she tried to spin it on Trump is unhinged. One of my favorite moments of the debate is when Brett came back and said, well, what about Biden? You know, what about his mental stability? And she was like, That spoke volumes.
Yeah. How does she go to the Al Smith dinner, frankly, after the way her response to any question in that interview was to attack Trump as viciously as she could?
Right.
Then how do you go and make nice?
Right.
Which is what you have to do. I don't think she could do it.
She says she wants to elevate the conversation. She calls Trump a fascist.
Right. That's elevating it. Elevating the vitriol.
If you want to elevate it, go to the Al Smith dinner. You can elevate it there because that's the whole atmosphere. At the same time, have fun with criticism of each other.
And she's not doing it.
She
You're
can't
right.
do it.
I can't wait to hear tomorrow all about it, you guys. So what do we all stand for, guys?
Truth,
justice, and the American way. God bless America, everybody.